I'm Frank Garza, and welcome to Here and Abroad, a podcast that follows the U.S. men's national team and their player pool across Europe, MLS, or wherever else they play their club football. On today's show, we're going to preview the USMNT's upcoming friendlies. They play South Korea this Saturday, September 6th, and Japan on the following Tuesday. Joining me again is Kyle Bond from the Sporting News. So, Kyle, it was a very interesting roster drop from Pochettino last week. He initially announced 22 players, but then Fuller and Balogun was added a few days later to make it 23. What was your biggest takeaway from Poch's roster selections?
Yeah, I was shocked when the roster came out. Then listening to him speak in his press conference, he never said it explicitly, but he seemed to very heavily indicate that this is the last window that he's bringing in these like fringe players to give themselves a chance to prove themselves for the windows moving forward. So while I don't agree with his timeline, right? Like I was pushing for them to use the summer for the first teamers to get chemistry and build this sort of pecking order. So I think pushing that back even further is inadvisable. I am less baffled or confused than I was when the roster was first released, because it seemed like before Pochettino spoke that he was actually like, these guys were maybe going to be the guys. And that would have obviously been confusing and weird and would make even less sense. So I'm sort of torn, like from a logical standpoint, he has an argument. From an objective standpoint, I don't agree. But not agreeing is easier to wrap your head around than not making sense. So from a sensible standpoint, I see where he's coming from. When I don't agree with the national team coach and what their process and philosophy is, I'm sort of in a let's wait and see mode, right? Like he's got the job. He is a very experienced manager. I think he has earned the benefit of the doubt to put his own process in place and see it out. If they flop at the World Cup, we're going to come back to the Gold Cup and we're going to come back to this window and go, you blew these chances to build chemistry with the first teamers. But if it works out, then it works out. And he has earned the benefit of the doubt. So while I don't agree with the process, I at least like, if this is indeed his last window to give these fringe guys a chance, so be it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he left off a lot of, mainstays that we were expecting, like the Wes McKennie, Yunus Musa, even like Tanner Tessmans of the world weren't brought in. From a center back perspective, no Cameron Carter-Vickers. So a lot of European guys that we might have expected to be there were not there. He continues to bring in a lot of MLS heavy players. And he did kind of reference several times, like you said, that he sees this as the last opportunity to see all these new faces. And so he kind of had that out. I mean, I'm still not sure if I believe him yet. We'll see in October, which I kind of feel like we're starting to say that every next window, like this window, I was like, we're going to learn so much with what he chooses for the September roster. Yep. And then what did we end up learning nothing.
Yep.
I don't know if we really learned anything.
Right? We keep kicking the can down the road in the things that we want to know, right? We want to know, what is the pecking order for the first team, right? Is Cameron Carter-Vickers involved? Like, where does the fullback rankings look like? There's so many things. Where does Johnny Cardoso stand? Which we might learn this window. We'll see. But like, there's so many first team questions that we have that we don't get answers to this window because he keeps kicking the can down the road.
Yeah.
And that is the frustrating part. No doubt.
And there is, this September window. You can see how the September window isn't so straightforward, right? I mean, there's a lot of players. I mean, everyone's kicking off their club season in Europe for the most part. They're like 2 or 3 games in. There's players who even over the weekend, U.S. players who finally made their like summer transfer, so they're adapting to new teams. There's injuries like the Ricardo Pepis, Anthony Robinsons of the world, who had injuries from last season, who are still kind of like not back in full form. So you can see why he like could use it as a window of like experimentation, but I don't know. I also think that he still hasn't decided which way he's going to go, and he's not happy with what he's seen from the player pool, and is a little bit desperate to try out some other options and see if he can find some players that he's happy with. We'll see. But here we are again now saying, okay, well, October. I can't wait till October, because in October we're finally going to know, and we'll see. We'll see. But I think what no matter what he says in October, whatever roster he puts out there, I think I'm going to be like, okay, no matter what you're saying, this is the direction I think you're heading, at this point.
Yeah, I agree. And especially because he's now kind of on the record, right? Like saying that October is the one. So I think regardless of what he says from here, yeah, no question about it, that is going to tell us a lot. But we only have what we have to work off, right?
Yeah, true. So let's talk about some of the players that are in camp. Who's a player too that you're really excited to watch this window for the U.S.
Fuller and Balogun, unquestionably. He's the guy that I want to see get going under Pochettino. Things could have not gone better for him for the last month. He is playing. Monaco sold Brillambolo this transfer window and didn't buy anybody else. In fact, Monaco, here's a fun fact, are the club with the highest positive net spend in Europe this transfer window. When you put together sold, like outgoing transfers and incoming transfers, they have the highest positive net spend, which means they sold a bunch of guys and didn't buy a lot. So they are putting faith in the guys that they have on the roster to fill those gaps. And Brillambolo was one of the biggest names that they sold. And so there's a lot now on Balogun's shoulders at the club level, and they have faith in him. So he needs to show why he is thought of so highly.
Yeah. And he's off to a good start. Scored a goal over the weekend. I think the last 2 matches he's gone either the full 90 or close to it. And so that's what surprised me the most. I thought he was kind of like working his way back from injury, but he's like going full 90 minutes. So yeah, he seems to be fully healthy.
Thankfully, his injury was a shoulder injury. So when you do that, you're able to rehab yourself a little easier because it's not an injury that requires you to recover the injury before you can recover your fitness. So he can work on his fitness while recovering his shoulder. It's basically just an injury that you need to avoid impact to recover from. So he could recover his fitness while recovering his injury. And then once he's back to full health, he's also likely back to full fitness. So,
okay. Yeah, I'm excited to see him. I'm excited to see all the strikers. I mean, this camp is going to be, I think, so important for the strikers who are in camp to try and get themselves in the, top 3 or 4 depth chart under Pochettino, because Ricardo Pepi is going to be there, or at least I feel pretty strongly he's going to be there. He's already been in some camps with Pochettino before he got injured. He scored some goals for Pochettino. Pochettino likes Ajiman because he keeps calling him, and I don't see that ending anytime soon as long as he gets healthy and starts playing for Derby County again. And so that's 2 of your strikers right there. And then a lot of people give the edge to Balogun, but then there's Josh Sargent who's scoring goals. So we kind of thought maybe he wasn't going to get another opportunity, but now, most certainly he is going to get some playing time, if not some starting playing time. We'll talk about that in a little bit, what we think is going to happen there. But yeah, this is an important window for these strikers to try and kind of I guess, get themselves ranked on the depth chart accordingly so that they can get called into that, that next October camp. The guy I'm most excited to see, I would say, though, is Dest. I mean, I've been waiting to get Serginho Dest back on the field for so long. I was psyched when he got called in to the June camp, and I thought we were going to see him play at the Gold camp, and then he ended up, leaving early. He's playing well at PSV. He looks like the old Serginho Dest. I mean, and I can't wait to see how Pochettino uses him in the lineup and what he can do. I've missed him. I mean, it's been like probably a year and a half since he's played for the U.S. men's national team. I'll have a big smile on my face when he rolls out there. Yeah. And then I think we have to mention at least Christian Pulisic. I mean, I'm more curious with him to see what his body language is like. Everyone's going to be watching him and Poch so closely, I think, from the interactions on the field to the handshakes and hugs after the matches to, if he gets subbed off and on, like every interaction is going to be kind of under the microscope. And not just with Poch, but just Christian in general. I'm curious to see what is his body language throughout this camp, throughout the window. Does he look happy on the field, or does he look frustrated?
Yeah, I think with Pulisic, I don't believe Pochettino for a second when he says, "Oh, Pulisic and I haven't spoken about the summer. It's, it's behind us, yada, yada." To me, that is the easy way out, which I also don't blame him for taking in the media, because if he says, "I didn't talk about it," then there's no more questions. There's no more follow-up, right? So he doesn't have to answer more questions about it. But I don't believe that for a second. They have to have spoken, right? Like, and if they haven't yet, they have once camp convenes. Maybe they were waiting for a face-to-face meeting. But there's got to be a conversation. And you go, "Hey, we're good, right?" Like that can be the whole conversation. But you got to talk. And I can't imagine they just let that simmer. Because, like, can you imagine if, in a working environment, if that happened with your boss? Like, it's untenable. And it would just be weird. And I can't imagine they let that go. So I don't believe him for a second. I don't blame him for taking the out like that in the media. But they have to have spoken. And I hope they've cleared it up.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he seems to be pretty hardcore about not speaking. I mean, you listen to pretty much any interview with the player nowadays, and the journalists ask. Like, I was just listening to this Gio Reyna, Joe Scally interview that Herc Gomez did, and he asked him, "Hey, you guys didn't get called in for the camp? Did anybody from the coaching staff like call you and tell you that you weren't getting called in for the camp, or like they give you a heads up?" And they kind of look at each other like, no. I mean, I remember even Dest, when he was injured, said he hadn't spoken to the coach. I mean, there seems to be this, I think what he's trying to do is he doesn't want to show favoritism to anybody. So he's just trying so hard not to talk to anybody, even though he says, like, I think there was the press conference for the June camp, where he was being asked about this, and he was like, "But if they call me and they want to talk to me, I'll talk to them anytime. I'll take them to dinner. I'll buy dinner." You know what I mean? But like, it seems hard to believe. I'm with you, but he also is kind of showing a history of just like not talking to these players directly and either letting his assistants do it or not doing it on his own. But I mean, regardless, they're going to have to talk.
That's fair. You bring up a good point. At this
camp,
I think the one player on the roster you can show favoritism to, though, is Pulisic. Like, he's the one guy where it's not at all weird, right?
Yeah, I hear you. Well, it's gonna be fun. I mean, I doubt Pulisic makes himself available to the media much this week. I know there's all kinds of media availability, but I'd be kind of surprised if he sits in on one of these daily press conferences, and puts himself in front of the cameras for a full like 15, 20 minutes of questioning. I see him more, maybe his style seems to be to roll up at the like at the training sessions, when the players might step in front of the mic for like 2 or 3 minutes and answer like a couple of questions. He'll do that before the actual match, but we'll see.
Mix zone.
Yeah, the mixed zone. That's what I'm talking. There you go. Okay, well let's transition to the starting lineup, and so we're each going to kind of put our projected starting lineup, and I want to preface it, especially before the one I'm about to put out, is that what I'm trying to do is project what I think Pochettino is going to do. Okay, so please bear with me. I'll try and point out where I would like to see it differently. But one thing I know from Poch is I don't think he's ever put out a starting lineup where there wasn't one or two things that like blew my mind, And so it seems pretty obvious to me when you look at the roster how it should be, how a lot of people think it would go, but I didn't go that way because I wanted to kind of embrace the fact that I know Poch is going to like surprise me a little bit. So I'm going to share mine with you first, Kyle, and then everybody who's on YouTube should be able to see this as well. For those who are not, I'll talk you through it. So basically, here's what I did. I think Poch is going to roll out the same starting lineup that he did against Mexico in the final of the Gold Cup, except for Patrick Agyemang and Malik Tillman, who are not in camp due to what I believe are injury-related things. Okay, and so in their place, Pulisic fits in nicely, in Tillman's place, makes that decision easy. The real decision for me was striker. Do I go with Balogun or Sargent? I went with Balogun just because I don't think Poch rates Sargent that highly. I'd probably go with Sargent because he's been on fire and he's been playing more games, and I would probably just give it to him. But I went with Fuller and Balogun. But let me go with my lineup here from goalkeeper all the way to the front. Matt Freese at goalkeeper. Tim Ream and Chris Richards are your center backs. Max Arfston and Alex Freeman are your fullbacks. And I want to point out here, I would much rather see Serginho Dest than Alex Freeman. It's possible that with a full week of training, it's so obvious that Dest is many levels ahead of Freeman that Potts just can't continue to go with Freeman. But I don't know. I just think that he likes this lineup from the Gold Cup and he wants to reward these guys and he's going to put them out there. So I ended up going with Freeman, but would love it if it's Dest instead. Luca De La Torre and Tyler Adams and Sebastian Berhalter. I'm showing him on my screen here as kind of like on the right wing, but kind of like in the Gold Cup, he's just going to be this midfielder who's playing a little further upfield, on the right. Maybe it's more of a 4-3-3 than a 4-2-3-1.
That's becoming a little more popular. I've noticed recently, like having one true winger and one like midfieldery winger. Inter Miami are doing it now with Rodrigo De Paul, where they're having him play as like a weird right midfield wingy-ish kind of guy. It's not really working, but yeah, I've noticed that's a little more popular recently. So we might see that more.
I've heard you say that before, that a lot of there's clubs in Europe doing that. So I'm going to go with it. So then that would leave, again, Luca De La Torre, Tyler Adams, Sebastian Berhalter as those midfielders, and then Christian Pulisic, Diego Luna, Fuller, and Balogun up top. I don't know exactly how he's going to position Luna or Pulisic. I could see either of them playing more centrally. Doesn't really matter too much to me, but I think those are going to be they're going to be there on the front line in one position or the other. So that leaves off. So I'm leaving off people like Tim Weah. I'm leaving off people like Serginho Dest, like I mentioned, and I'm leaving off someone like a Josh Sargent. I think if I was going to make my preference, I would probably have Sebastian Berhalter in place of Luca De La Torre as one of the holding midfielders. I would put Tim Weah on the wing along with Christian Pulisic on the other wing. I would definitely have Dest instead of Freeman, and then I would probably put Sargent over Balogun. But again, I'm trying to predict what Pochettino is doing here. What's your thoughts?
So we're close.
Okay.
There's only two changes in my 11. I have Dest in there. I think I think he wants to see Serginho Dest. And I know that he's like giving these guys chances. And maybe he does go with Freeman and it would make sense. Like that is a perfectly reasonable argument because I could see him going, look, this is the window for these fringe guys to get chances. So I'm going to give my fringe guys chances. Dest is already in. Let me give Alex Freeman a look. I think he's going to want to give Dest a chance to play in his system, and this is the opportunity to do that. I think he gives one game in this window to both. So
I agree with that. I think 100%.
Who knows which is which?
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that. Yeah.
If you're only looking at it from a fitness standpoint, maybe he gives Dest the second game because then he has a couple more days to like get. I don't know, but I think he gives one to each. So I think us splitting it 1-1 makes sense here.
Yeah.
And then I just have Tim Weah in on the right wing for Berhalter. I think Pochettino has spoken very highly of Timothy Weah. He's not had a ton of chances to play him because of injuries and other issues, Club World Cup, that kind of thing. But he's spoken highly of Tim Weah, and Weah was one of the very few quality performers in the March window in the Nations League. He played really well. And so I think Poch has enough of a high opinion of Weah that he'll start him here. Then
won't surprise me at all if you're right there as well. I mean, he did. He looked dynamic in that. I'm thinking of the Nations League quarterfinal against Jamaica where he played and he looked incredible.
Yeah. So this is how I see it. I think you'll see both other center backs get time, like Banks and Blackman. You'll see them. I wouldn't be shocked if one of them starts a game. But I think Poch will bring them in for like 30 minutes to see how they do before giving them a start. And
let me ask you.
Yeah.
Because I like your lineup here, and I pretty much, even though it's a little bit different than mine, I tend to like yours now and I'll be more happy with it. The one thing I'd question, though, is I think I would put in Berhalter over De La Torre. Talk to me about that one. Do you see that as at 50-50, or do you lean pretty strongly towards De La Torre?
I don't. I lean towards De La Torre because of a number of reasons. One, he was like, this is going to sound insulting, and I actually mean it in a positive way. He was like not bad in the Gold Cup. He wasn't great. He didn't jump off the page, but like he didn't have any issues. And I was expecting him because like my thing with De La Torre is like he's good and then has problems. I didn't see that. So like he's not a guy that's ever going to jump off the page, but he wasn't bad this summer. And I think he came in some tough spots. Like he came in for Cardoso when Cardoso was yanked in, I want to say it was like the first or second Gold Cup game, or maybe it was one of the friendlies, and was like marketably better. And I think that wins a lot of goodwill with Poch. Like you come in a place you weren't expected. Like a lot of this stuff is probably pre-planned. Like, okay, you're going to come in this minute, you're going to start, then you're going to come in the 60th minute, whatever. If you come in a moment where it wasn't pre-planned and you perform well, that probably goes a long way. He ended up starting a bunch of games, and I think ultimately he's a longer term piece than Berhalter is. So I think he's going to get the nod in that sense. I could see it. I could see Berhalter playing, no doubt about it. But I think De La Torre has the experience over Berhalter. He has the recent performances that Berhalter also has, and he fits better next to Adams. So, yeah.
Okay. Couple other things. Well, first, I'm kind of surprised. I thought you were going to go with Josh Sargent. I see you as a big Josh Sargent guy. I thought you were going to give me a hard time for not putting him in my lineup. You went with Balogun. Is that because you think Poch rates Balogun higher, or would you actually prefer to see Balogun there too?
I want to see both. I think both in similar ways deserve a chance here. I think Balogun will get the first opportunity. And I think Potch wants to make Sargent earn it in training or off the bench. And I think that's fair. I don't think he's performed well enough for the national team. Like, we keep saying he's had his last chance, he's had his last chance, he's had his last chance. And each time he's called in, it makes sense. He's been amazing for Norwich City this year. Again. But at this point, I feel like he's used up his national team chances, and he needs to earn it the same way a new player in a squad would earn a place. Like, they come in, show me what you have in training, show me what you have off the bench. I'm not just going to put you in the starting lineup. You gotta show me. I don't care what you did for them. You got to show me you belong in this lineup. And so I think he'll get a chance off the bench maybe in this game to prove it, and then go from there.
Okay, that makes sense to me. Okay, so this is Kyle's lineup. He's going with Matt Freese, Tim Bream, Chris Richards, Arfston, Dest still on the back, Luca De La Torre, Tyler Adams. As the midfielders, Pulisic, Luna, and Weah, and then Fuller and Balogun up top. Here's my starting lineup, which is the same except for two changes. I'm going with Sebastian Berhalter over Tim Weah, not as a winger, but just as a upfield playing midfielder or whatever you want to call it.
Honestly, you could put Berhalter at the 10 and Luna on the right, too.
That's true, too. And then I'm going with Alex Freeman over Dest. Again, not because I want to, but because I just think maybe Poch is going to just keep the same starting lineup of the Gold Cup out there for this first match anyway. But I would be 100% shocked if Dest didn't get at least, one start. So that's going to make me happy to see him no matter what, whether he gets one or two starts, I'm going to be happy there. Okay, final thing I wanted to talk about here real quick is the opponents. We're playing South Korea and we're playing Japan. I like to share just a little bit of information about some rankings and whatnot to give folks an idea about that. So in the FIFA rankings, the U.S. is number 15, Japan is 17, South Korea is 23. So all three teams pretty close. However, if you go over to the ELO ratings, it tells a different tale. Japan is 13, South Korea 34, U.S. 44. So a little bit more separation there. You look at the most recent matchups of the teams. The U.S. lost to Japan 2-0 in 2022. It was one of their final World Cup tune-up friendlies. And I remember it giving us all a lot of alarm heading into the World Cup, the way the U.S. played that day. Last match against South Korea was in 2014, where the U.S. won 2-0. Kyle, I took a close look at their rosters, and just to note that from Japan, most of their roster plays in Europe. I noticed there was a few, maybe 3 or 4, that do play in the Japanese professional leagues, but most of them are European-based, much like the U.S. lineups, used to look before we started bringing the MLS players. South Korea, I counted 10 of their 26 players who play in Europe, so they're not nearly as strong from a European presence standpoint. But I think both of these are good teams. I mean, what do you think is important to know about the opponents for fans?
Yeah, first thing to know is that the Japanese and Korean professional leagues are actually quite good. And so don't take that as like a slight against the squads at all. They're a little top heavy, but they're good. Like the best teams, just like a lot of other leagues, the best teams in Japan and Korea win every year. But that's not crazy. In Korea, you have Ulsan, you have Jeonbuk, and in Japan, you have Kashima Antlers, you have FC Tokyo, and a couple of other teams. So that's nothing new, but it is something to note. The Korean team, there's a number of regulars that people may recognize. Obviously, everybody knows Heung-min Son, or I should say Son Heung-min. I need to get used to saying them in that order because that's the correct order. He was with Spurs, now with LAFC. Where's the captain's armband? He'll be there. Everybody wants to see him. I expect a very, very pro South Korea crowd in Harrison. There is a large Korean population in that area, and the game has sold out. So I expect a very anti-US crowd there, which is not anything that new. Also, some key players, Kim Min-jae, people may know from Bayern Munich. Bayern Munich fans hate him, but they hate a lot of players on their squad right now. They're in kind of a weird place, but he's been mistake prone for them, but he's one of their key defenders, very experienced at the highest level. And then you've got a really interesting smattering of like mid-tier, like group of five, if you will, to use an American college football reference, clubs. Obviously, you've got Lee Kang-in, who plays for PSG, but he's like a fringe player for them. You've got a player for FC Midtjylland in Denmark. They have European experience. You've got a 22-year-old German-born guy, Jans Kastrup, who plays for Gladbach. You've got a striker who plays for Genk in Belgium. So there is very like group of five feel to this squad. I like it a lot. A player for Red Star Belgrade. So that's interesting. Japan, I have less preparation on. But I think you'll see a lot of stuff that you usually see from Japan, which is similar to what we just talked about with Korea. Couple of top level guys, a couple of really experienced players, and then, a number of group of five players from there. Wataru Endo from Liverpool is their captain. He's versatile. He can play midfield. He can play defense, but he's naturally a number 6. But very similar to like Lee Kang-in, plays for a big European club, but is sort of a fringe player for them. And then you've got guys at Crystal Palace. You've got guys at Celtic. You've got guys at Monaco, Genk again, Eintracht Frankfurt, Real Sociedad, very group of five feel. So very similar squads. Japan, a little more experience from a cap level, but you're going to see similar tactics and similar squad makeup between both these teams.
Yeah. And these are good teams. And these are going to be good tests, right? I mean, I think these are two countries that if you played them in the World Cup, you would, from a U.S. standpoint, I feel like we would think we could win. We wouldn't be scared of these two teams. We would probably feel like, okay, we can win these games, but you certainly couldn't go out there and play poorly and expect to win. I mean, you would have to play well to beat these teams.
I mean, Japan beat Germany in the last World Cup.
Yeah.
And both of these teams have a similar vibe to them. They do not make mistakes, and they have players who don't jump off the page but can hurt you at any given moment. And the players I'm thinking about are a guy like Takefusa Kubo for Japan, who used to play for Real Madrid he had a cup of coffee at Real Madrid, now plays for Real Sociedad, and is just kind of one of those like grinded out players who puts in the hard work. He does all the things that a coach loves from an attacking player and still creates a lot of chances and can score from anywhere. So like there's a lot of these players that have experience at a big club maybe, or they just have a good statistical profile, or there's no weaknesses in their game. They defend really well. They create chances for their teammates. Another one, Karu Matoma, who plays for Brighton. A lot of dirty work, good defensive player, still a ton of creative output. So
would you say we're the underdogs? Would you say we're the underdogs against both these teams?
I would say the U.S. should be favorites against Korea and should be slight favorites against Korea and slight underdogs against Japan.
Okay. That makes sense. And we'd feel good. I mean, if the U.S. won both of these friendlies, especially with this team, I think we'd leave this window feeling like really positive, probably like
I
the
would not
most
expect
positive.
that to happen.
I'm not saying, but I mean, that's what I'm saying is these would be important wins. I mean, there hasn't. I mean, we would feel pretty positive, I think. But yeah, I think we it's going to be a tough test. Going to be a tough test, especially with the team we're rolling out there. All right. Well, Kyle, thank you. I will make sure and put links in the show notes as usual to your X account, which is at @the_bonfire, and also to your work at the Sporting News. We'll be excited to see how you cover the match and what you write afterwards. Thanks again so much for joining the show.
Thank you very much, Frank.
And thanks to everyone for listening to Here and Abroad. If you enjoyed the episode, please do me a huge favor and hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube, or that follow button if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or somewhere else. Thank you so much. I'm Frank Garza. You can follow me on X at FrankGarza007, and I'll be back next week with a new episode.